Abraham experience is to be our experience. So the Abraham experience is to be our experience. The way in which Abraham conducted his faith, the way in which Abraham allowed his faith to conduct its own self, not putting anything to it and not confining it in any way, but allowing it to be free, and in that freedom to move and to move into the intention that it had and not that he had for it. This is the type of creative innovation that we need to give to our faith, and that we need to allow the living God to have our faith's trust in. And this is where we left off. At is Abraham, allowing this individual's experience to be our example. And this is fitting because when it comes to the living God's chief apostle, when we turn to the book of Hebrews chapter 2, we're told that he did not take on the nature of angels, but he took on the seed or the nature of Abraham. So if we're making a decision of who we want to be, not we personally, our faith, our conversation, depending on the likeness or the construct that we would have our faith or our conversation as, the key model, the prime model, is Abraham from beginning to the end. It's Abraham. And this is interesting. This is interesting because we're reading the Bible, and we're always going to come across those points where it says, I brought you and your people up out of Egypt. And so we have Moses as the key figure, key likeness, the prime mind of what the conversation should look like on the surface. But as we've seen countless times through scripture, there would come a point in time where the image or the likeness or the prime mind or character, devotional character of Moses should pass away. And what should return to the individual conversation is Abraham. And in the book of Isaiah, this is key, and this is for our review. In the book of Isaiah 51 verses 1 and 2. Isaiah 51 verses 1 and 2. The book of Isaiah, chapter 51, verses 1 and 2 reads, Hearken to me, you that follow after righteousness. Ye that seek the Lord, look unto the rock whence you are hewn, and to the hole of the pit whence you are digged. Look unto Abraham your father, and unto Sarah that bare you, for I called him alone, and blessed him, and increased him. And this is different. This is different because how are we supposed to put into context? On the one hand, you've got a God saying to an individual, give them laws and commandments and statutes to govern themselves by. And by this, they will come to me, and I will come to them. But then and now, you have a God saying, no, my people, Israel, remember where you are from. The hole of the pit you are digged from, where you are hewn. Remember where your grave sits at. It is that Abraham, who I called alone. If you are inclined toward righteousness. So how do you pick and choose? How do you pick and choose? How do you understand what to choose? Is it the righteousness given by Moses? Which is, I need to do a handwritten religious code in order for me to receive whatever I need to receive? Or do I honor Abraham? The discipline or the faith of Abraham, to where I don't need these things that Moses said, but I simply just need to take my faith and walk. See, the Bible is an interesting book. The philosophy within the Bible, it's pretty interesting. And when we're seeing two different forms of devotional service, where you have Moses, the service of Moses is honoring a handwritten religious commandment or tradition or theory, and allowing one's mind to center on that for the point. Or you have Abraham, whose devotional conversation was regulated not by the handwritten religious law or commandment, but by the movement of the faith's intellect and the faith's mind. So on one hand, we can see what the Bible might be saying, okay, so you have options, and depending on what kind of character you like, you can have those options. Option number one, apparently, is you can just honor commandments by your denomination, and you can follow the script of what you are traditionally taught in theory and in deed, and you can honor your God that way. Or if you don't like that option, there's another. If you don't like that option, there is the option of not doing that, but allowing your faith to dictate your conversation, allowing your faith to go through an experience where it then devises the structure of its conversation, and by that you can honor your God. So it seems like the Bible's given us options, which is very thoughtful. But on the surface, that's what it seems like. In reality, there is a narrative in the Bible, and the beginning narrative within the Bible, it has nothing to do with Moses's devotional character, or the way that Moses honored his God. And even Moses himself told us this, and prophesied that his manner of service would come out of fashion and no longer be popular. We have reviewed this verse, but in the book of Deuteronomy 18 and verse 18. Deuteronomy 18 and verse 18. Deuteronomy chapter 18 and verse 18 reads, I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren like unto thee. This is Moses receiving this. Like unto Moses. I will raise him up a prophet like unto thee, Moses, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. So, in history at this point in time, in ecclesiastical history, Moses is writing in the fact that there will be an individual that will cause a similar movement, just like him. And these words that he will speak, the Bible doesn't say, I will raise them up a prophet and he shall speak thy words. I will raise them up a prophet and he shall speak like thee, like you. The Bible says, I will raise them up a prophet like you, but he will speak my words. This allows us to know that the words that Moses spoke were not those words. The words that Moses spoke, and in summary, the religious philosophy that Moses gave to these people was not the living God's philosophy. If it was, we would not have this verse. And so at a point in time, at a specific point in time, the devotional character of Moses was to fall back and to fall away and to be remembered no more, being replaced by the speech of this prophet, whose words were the words of the living God. And if in the beginning there was no quote-unquote Moses, or there was no formal religious code or tradition to follow, if we don't see that anywhere in Genesis, then that means that the words of the living God, that the words that this prophet should speak, have absolutely nothing to do with what Moses forwarded, or with what was advanced by Moses' age. And this is definitely a change in spectrum, because we're seeing that the Bible does have a narrative, and that it is not a bit or a lot, or even as a matter of fact confused. It knows what its narrative is, and its narrative is not Moses, but its narrative is the exercising of the character by faith. So now in the book of Galatians, we have this very argument that I am now making written out already. It's already there in the Bible. Galatians 3. Galatians chapter 3, verses 23 through 25. Galatians chapter 3, verses 23 through 25. This argument is already here. Galatians 3, 23 through 25 reads, "But before faith came, we meaning the Jewish religious world, whether you are a convert or a natural born Jew, but before faith came, we were kept under the law, shut up unto the faith which should afterwards be revealed. Wherefore the law was our schoolmaster. The law was our schoolmaster to bring us unto Christ, that we might be justified by faith. But after that faith is come, we are no longer under a schoolmaster." And that's the point here. The point is that the concept of the philosophy of the religious law dictating the contents of the conversation was to exist only for so long. And it was not to exist, for example, until now, as every denomination does this. The faithful tribe will acknowledge the transition made within the Bible. The faithful tribe will acknowledge the narrative that is within the Bible. Now, the narrative within the Bible did not begin with Moses. Yes, Moses entered, and yet Moses entered for a set period of time only to fall back. Now, falling back, there should be no return to it, because with the illustration of the crucifixion, as we have seen many times, that illustration points to the death of the construct or the constitution behind Moses' religious philosophy. That illustration points to the death behind the construct or the constitution of Moses' religious philosophy. It was simply just an example within itself to teach on what should come after. The experience, the physical experience that was then experienced and that was then known, was to transcend the physical and to enter inward. All of the sacrifices, all of the routines, all of the experiences, all of the humility, all of the correction, all of it was to transcend the physical and to enter into the inward conversation, allowing the new covenant promise to be fulfilled. That old covenant promise said, "Do these things and receive blessing to your land." Physically do these things, physically receive blessing to your land, and you might receive something within your mind and heart. But the new covenant promise is that what will happen, or what did happen outwardly, will happen within. And so as there was an outward experience, there needs to be an inward experience. And that inward experience is, as Paul says in the book of Galatians, is justification. Justification by the exercising of one's faith. By his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many, it says in the book of Isaiah 53. So again, if justification by faith is now it, and if it says by his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many, justification is to be experienced or known by an exercising on the knowledge of the living God's chief apostle. This is plain. This cannot be held to a form of deed or act. The mind has to go through it, the body must follow, and the wisdom gained, where we left off in our last time together, is to be taken in and recycled, and continually recycled and taken in, so that we can keep on moving by the faith of that wisdom that we acquire. This is the instruction to Abraham. Remember where you are born, says the Bible, because I called Abraham, I called him alone. Now let's let's take a trip back in history. Let's take a trip back in history. Abraham was called out from what? Abraham was called out from what? Now, at this point in time, the Sumerian deities rule. The Sumerian deities rule. Abraham was called out. And we're going to just think about what this means, that he was called out. Abraham was called out from the then religion. Now, the then religion had a triune of deities, or a triad, or a trinity of deities. Just like in every age, even our present, there is a triad, triune, or a trinity of deities, right? At this point in time, the trinity was Anu, Enki, and Enlil. Anu, Enki, and Enlil. Anu was the supreme, everything you can think of as being supreme, put that to him. He was the supreme of the gods, and he was the supreme of the council of the gods, and he was the supreme of the kings on the earth. So Anu is everything and everything. All in all, whatever you want to connect him as. God the Father, whatever you want to, that's Anu. Anu is Anu is that. And then he has sons, Enlil, Enki. Enki, this name, or you could say that Enki translates to Lord of the Earth. Enki is Lord of the Earth. Enki created human beings with the goddess mother by his side. Created human beings. He is known as the god of wisdom and intellect. Enlil is Lord Wind, Lord of the Wind. Enlil is synonymous with the storm, god, hurricane, earth, wind, similar to the God of Israel, or El. And Enlil, with the blood of Enlil, Enki gave life and mind to human beings. So at this point in Enlil is also the one that is worshipped above Enki at this point in time. In the life of Abraham, Enlil was that God. Enlil was that God of Abraham. It wasn't Enki for some reason, and it wasn't, of course, Anu, but Enlil was that fixation. And the way these gods, and especially Enlil, was worshipped was similar to today, idolatry. Idols that are seated, idols around the neck, on the body, customs, rites, traditions, so on and so forth. This is the way that it was done back then. We should not think this is weird, because we do the same things today. When Abraham received his message about what this God was, he saw it in a different way from his age. And what he saw was that none of these things honor this deity. None of these things honor it. And they cannot, because they don't give life. They have no life in them. If this is a living deity and these things don't give life, then what matter does it mean? Hereafter, the man understood that he needed to depart from this and to honor his understanding in a new way. And he did. Honored his understanding in a new way. And whatever blessing he received from it, whatever wisdom he received from it, he attributed to the manner in which he went. And so when we're hearing in the Bible that Abraham was called alone, and that this is the pit from which we are digged, and that this is our remembrance, we should understand that as this individual was called out of that same triune and took his faith and then advanced that faith without that, and developed what he did, this example is for us to do the same for our faith, to let it be what it should be without any sort of hindrance. And so turning to the book of Romans, because remember, all of this is for the sake of justification. Our faith is to be justified from what is erroneous religion, from what is erroneous self-belief, from what is erroneous opinion. And in a religious or devotional context, our conversation is to be cleansed, is a better word. Justification means cleansed, is to be cleansed from these things so that it can be for us what we as human beings need it to be. Our faith is not supposed to be confined to a specific realm. Our faith is to encompass our entire being. It is to encompass our entire being and in a positive way. It is to heal us. It is to heal us. We are not supposed to continually lend health, to give power to our belief. That's draining. It is our faith that is supposed to heal who we are so that we can then take that healing and take that balance and move out into the world, and move out into our families, and move out into our friends, and make impacts that allow the same regeneration to take place. Now in the book of Romans 4, 13 and 14, in the book of Romans chapter 4, verses 13 and 14, in the book of Romans chapter 4, verses 13 and 14, it reads, "For the promise," speaking of Abraham, "for the promise that he should be heir of the world was not to Abraham or to his seed through the law, but through the righteousness of faith. For if they which are of the law be heirs, faith is made void, and the promise made of none effect." If we could dive into the narrative within the Bible and into the controversy of that narrative, we would find that the entire Bible is a philosophy putting two concepts against one another. First concept is honor to the deity by the doing of religious law. And by religious law, don't think strictly Moses, think context of what religious law is. Religious law is doing any deed for the sake of gaining favor by the divine eye. Any deed for the sake of gaining perceived righteousness by the divine eye. On the other hand, it is not doing any of this for any perceived righteousness or favor or piety by the divine eye. It is taking one's belief in hand and adding wisdom and knowledge to it. The controversy within the Bible is a narrative that is putting these two devotional services, these two personal devotional services, against one another. From beginning to end, that's all the Bible is about. The controversy of the religious law versus the liberation, which is a controversy to that religious law, of the conversation's character by the exercising of its inward faith. From beginning to end, this is the controversy. And from beginning to end, the war is over our minds. The war is over our minds, the mind of our devotional conversation, if it would lend itself to the philosophy of Moses or if it would lend itself to the philosophy of Abraham. We have to make a decision. We have to make a decision about what is decent for us, true. The philosophy of Abraham may not be for us. Okay, do the philosophy of Moses. Philosophy of Moses may not be for us. Okay, learn the philosophy of Abraham. While we have options, and that's all well and good, the Bible is letting us know its option. The Bible is letting us know its counsel for what we should tend to. And the Bible does not tend to give advice, to give ear to Moses' devotional philosophy. But from the beginning until the end, the Bible's advice is to turn to Abraham's devotional philosophy. Why? Because our faith is to develop bones and structure and confidence. It's supposed to do this for the sake of guiding our human being. Turning to the book of Isaiah, Isaiah 42. We have again reviewed this countless times, but this is again fitting. Isaiah 42, 16 and 17. Isaiah 42, verses 16 and 17. Isaiah 42, verses 16 and 17 reads, "And I will bring the blind by a way that they knew not. I will lead them in paths that they have not known. I will make darkness light before them, and crooked things straight. These things will I do unto them, and not forsake them. They shall be turned back. They shall be greatly ashamed that trust in graven images, that say to the molten images, you are our gods." And this is, again, the heart of what needs to be cleansed from our conversation. When it comes to justification, we are to be cleansed from our gods. Now, there are physical gods and then there are mental gods. When entering into the religious world, and specifically into the world of our denomination, we are given theories of how to perceive God and how to perceive everything else. There are gods in our imagination that need to be cleansed. There are physical gods, and that there are gods we can concoct from really not knowing what is being said within the scriptures mentally. The point of justification is taking our faith and our conversation's conscience and the character of our conversation through an experience to where it can have itself, its thoughts, and its feelings removed from the self, the thoughts, and the feelings within the religious world. Why? Because we are our own entity. We are personally responsible for ourselves. And when we can understand that personal responsibility and how it relates to the living God, then, as the Bible says, you will be ashamed, I will be ashamed, we will be ashamed for how we have carried ourselves so vainly. And we will give to our faith the liberty that it is actually needing. This is our spouse. This is our spouse, family. This is our spouse. Within our faith is a character that is the spouse to our human being. The more we let that sit, the more we forget who we are as a human being. We're supposed to take that up and to give it power to live.